YouTube. Today on the Naughty Librarian, I am doing my June wrap-up. I read 13 books this month. I'm not really sure how that happened. I was not expecting to read as many books as I read, but like, I'm a machine apparently, and I read 13 of them. Holy potatoes. Since there are so many books, I just want to get into them, so I'm just gonna go in random order. These are the books I read this month. Let's go. Coming in at 4 stars, I have Unearthed by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. It's kind of like Indiana Jones meets Tomb Raider in space. And it's basically these two kids on this planet going through all these like ancient temples with booby traps and trying to figure out secrets. Mia is the Tomb Raider, and Jules is definitely Indiana Jones, because I was just waiting the whole time I was reading this. I was waiting for Jules to be like, it belongs in a museum! It just took a long time for it to really like find its footing, in my opinion. Like, it kind of started slow. But once like it found like its momentum, it kept going, and then like I enjoyed it quite a bit, so I recommend. Coming in at 3.5 stars, I have Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I went into this book with such high expectations because I know this book is like, everyone has like a million boners for it. It's supposed to be amazing and everyone loves it, and there's so much merch, and it's like, you know, the be-all end-all of fantasy series. So when I started reading it, I did not find it to be the be-all end-all fantasy series, because I think I was expecting too much from it. I feel like if I went in with lower expectations, I might have enjoyed it more than I did. Alina, the heroine in this, I just kind of felt she was a bit ineffectual for most of the story. She spends a lot of time whining about things, and she had such potential to be really badass, and she's not really cool until like the end of the book. So it's a long time to wait for someone to be cool. Like, waiting 300 pages for the last 30 pages of cool is a lot. So I think she could have been a lot cooler earlier on, in my opinion. And you have the love triangle. You have Mal, her childhood best friend, who honestly, like, I am in love with. He's the best. He's basically a big old knight in shining armor, and I freaking love it. He's like perfect. I just love him so much. Then you have the Darkling, who so many people like for some reason, and here's the thing. It's okay to like him as a character, because as a character, he is so juicy. He is very conflicted, and like, he's just like really three-dimensional. He's juicy, and he's an interesting, dynamic character, but as far as boyfriend material goes, I ain't fucking with that. He would be such a bad boyfriend. He's just moody and broody all the time. Like, ugh, like he'd be the worst. He'd be the kind of boyfriend that if you didn't text him back right away, he would assume you either have been murdered or you're fucking someone else. Like, that's him. Tell me it's not. Tell me it's not. It's totally him. Anyway, I went down like a weird tangent for a minute there. Anyway, Shadow and Bone. It's actually really beautiful as far as world building goes, because it's very complex. It has kind of like Russian vibes to it. It's very beautifully written. It's just not the best story. Coming in at 4.5 stars, I have Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli. I really love Becky Albertalli's books. They're so wonderful, and I just love them to bits. Like, the humor in them, it's so funny. They're always hilarious. If I'm gonna compare all of her books as a series, I think Leah on the Offbeat is probably my least favorite of the three. Here's the thing. Leah is very acerbic and sarcastic, and that's where a lot of the humor comes from, and I appreciate that. The girl is witty AF, but the thing is, she's also like the personification of like your worst self, basically. So it's hard to read a whole book from someone who's like that moody and angry all the time, so it's difficult to read from her perspective and not like get, you know, moody and angry yourself. So I think that was what was drawing me out of the story a bit. It also felt very convenient because, like, spoilers, gosh darn it. Right now I'm gonna say a spoiler. When I put my wine glass down, you can unmute it. Leah is bisexual. We already knew that going in. And she starts dating Abby Suso, who is a character we've seen in all 3 books. And she has always been a heterosexual character, and all of a sudden she's bisexual, and these two, and Leah and Abby get together, and it's just like, that's very convenient almost. There's like nothing in any of the previous books that would have made me see a spark between them at all. It just felt very convenient. It's like, what character can we stick her with? This one. And they just did that, and I don't know, it just felt too, I don't know, it just felt convenient. Like, it was like lazy a bit. I thought Leah would maybe start dating Nora, which is Simon's little sister, and I thought that would have been like really funny and had a lot of comedic potential, but that didn't happen. And I don't know, I just felt like it was like, okay, like I felt like it didn't work for some reason. Spoilers complete. I still loved it, of course I loved it. It's that Becky Albertalli book. It always has that good humor. It's just probably my least favorite of the series. I also finally read A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's a total fluffy romance, and I loved it. It had smutty bits. It had like everything I wanted it to have. Perfect. This would be the perfect book for you if you went and saw Black Panther and loved it, but you secretly wished it wasn't about superheroes and had like a lot more romance and smut in it. Because if that's you, this is the book. It's about this girl, Naledi, and she keeps getting these emails saying like, hey, did you know you're betrothed to this African prince? You just need to send us your social security number and blah, 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 blah. And you know, we all know the Nigerian prince scam. So she's like, delete. And essentially the book is about, okay, but what if that was true? There is an African prince who she is betrothed to, and he comes to town looking for her. And then, you know, mistaken identities and a trip to Africa and a whirlwind romance. And it also delves into some really deeper issues, like women in sciences in particular, because there's a lot of discrimination there. She's a woman of color, so also just like living life as a woman of color has its own set of difficulties, and I like that these things were delved into. However, they weren't delved into that deeply in lieu of the romance, but I mean, it's a romance novel, so like why would they not delve into the romance? As far as smut content goes, it's not super smutty. It has like a handful of explicit scenes, but they're very good explicit scenes. So I think it's more of a quality over quantity thing kind of here. I also read The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. Leanna over at Leanna's Library keeps telling me how much she loves this book and it's one of her favorites, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read it right now. It has everything I love in it. Like, it has great dialogue, it has great magic and fantasy, and I love the Gentleman Bastards, which is like kind of like a crime group. That's what they call themselves. They're bickering and they're bantering, and so much of it is heists and crime, and it's everything you would love. Everything I love is in it. The problem was I could not connect to Locke Lamora, and he's the main character. He's the one whose perspective the whole book is told through, and I have no idea who he is as a person. No, by the end of the book, I did get to know him a bit, but this is like over 700 pages, so that's a long time to go to get to know somebody. And I think that was the main thing that held me back from absolutely loving this, because if I can't connect to the main character, then like I have less, you know, invested in the outcome of the story. So I think that was it. Like, I wasn't as invested. But I mean, dialogue, humor, fantasy, like the connections between the characters, I loved all of it. I loved everything. I couldn't connect. And that was the thing that drew me out. But it is very good. So there is that. I liked it a lot. I wish I got to know, like, Locke. I also read Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I gave this 2.5 stars. Because there was some problems, okay? I'm just gonna say it. I know a lot of people love this book and this series, and that's okay. Like, it has a lot of things going for it that were pretty good. I liked the setting. I appreciated the effort that went into the mystery in the book. The problem was that I've read enough mysteries that I can see a red herring coming from a mile away. And it's like there were so many red herrings that there was like a glaring neon light saying, we're pointing at this guy as the killer, but he's not. Ha 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 ha. It was like so obvious. And it was so obvious to the point where I was like 3 chapters in, I was like, oh, well, that's the killer. That's totally the killer. And I mean, I was right. Like, I guessed the killer right, like, immediately. And, okay, you know, I guessed the killer right, but I didn't guess why the killer was killing people. That I did not guess. So there is that. There is one moment in this book that basically made me give it 2.5 stars because it is the most ridiculous line I read in a long time. So the main character in this is named Audrey, and she is a girl in the 1830s, and she's studying forensic medicine with her uncle. So basically, she spends all her daytime cutting up dead bodies and doing autopsies. One could say she has a pretty good understanding of how the human body operates, yes? At one point in this story, she comes across a man in an alley who had been recently murdered, and she freaks out. Obviously, that's okay. If I went up to a guy and tapped him on the shoulder and his head fell off, I'd freak the F out too. Not a problem with that. The problem is her reaction afterward. So she's feeling really guilty about this guy in an alley, and like I said, his head fell off, like he was decapitated. He was super dead. And she's like feeling bad. She's like, perhaps if I got there sooner and applied my handkerchief, I could have saved him. And it's like, bitch, ain't you a doctor? Like, what? Like, what amount of handkerchiefs is gonna fix a decapitation? Like, what did you think was gonna happen? Like, that just like threw me out of the rest of the story. I'm just like, nope, honey, no. Like, I can't get behind you as a character or a person. Like, that was the dumbest thing I've ever read. So that ended up being 2.5 stars. Coming in at 5 stars, I have Forest of 1,000 Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh my goodness, it was so darkly beautiful. Like, I loved it intensely. It's kind of a retelling of the evil queen from Snow White. So it's the evil queen's like origin story, but set in like a fictional ancient China. All of that sentence is amazing. It's like a really strange sensation to be completely obsessed with the main character, but also be rooting for them to fail, like at the same time, because they're super evil. The main character in this is Shifeng, and she will become the evil queen in the Snow White story. And she does some very evil things in this. Like, she literally will eat a bitch's heart. Like, she eats hearts. Like, she eats hearts! And you root for her, but at the same time, you're like, no, I shouldn't root for you. You're like murdering people. Oh. So it's like a weird give and take, because you're like, oh, I just love her so much. She's so cool and interesting. But at the same time, you're like, oh, but she's evil. Ah. So it made me feel conflicted, but like in the best way. It's so dark and it's so good and it's so like beautifully, lyrically, richly written that like I highly recommend. I'm like all about it. It's so good. I attempted to read The Edge of Everything by Jeff Giles. This is actually a DNF for me. I really tried not to DNF books, but I got to like 43% of the way through this book and like gave 0 fucks about anything that was happening in it. Like, I couldn't make myself, and I was trying to read it. Like, I tried to read this for the whole month, and I got to 43% because I couldn't make myself do it. Like, that's how little like I cared about the story, and I didn't like anybody in it. I wasn't for me. I just was not feeling it, and I was like, why am I forcing myself to do something I don't like? I'm a grown-ass adult. I don't gotta do that. So I quit. I also read City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare, so I finally finished the Mortal Instruments series, and miracle of all miracles, I actually gave it 4 out of 5 stars. None of the other books of the series has come in above 3, so this one was a shocker for me. Mainly because these shadow hunters finally pulled their heads out of their butts and started thinking. Like, that's all I wanted them to do for the previous 5 books. If they just would have thought for like a minute about things, like, I would have liked them a lot more. I couldn't be more pleased with the fact that they were doing clever things finally. Like, every Ravenclaw bone in my body was just like slow clapping the whole time. Just like, oh my gosh, my little babies. They're finally smart. Downside is, this is over 700 pages long. It is super long. And it had a lot of filler chapters that I'm like, why is this in there? I could have literally ripped the chapter out of the book and it would not have affected the story at all. So it needed to be edited back a bit. Like, honestly, they could have taken out like 100 pages. This could have been 100 pages shorter and still been just as good. I'm glad I finally finished the series. It's done. I think I will probably still read the rest of the books because I'm a glutton for punishment, but it's over. I finished it. Ta-da! And it was arguably the best chapter of the 6 chapters of this series, so yay. I also read The Wrath in the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh, and I gave it 5 stars because it is gosh darn amazing. I am like blown away by how amazing this was. This is kind of a retelling of the 1001 Arabian Nights story. So you have Shahrazad, who marries the king, and she basically has to keep telling him this story every night because the king likes to murder his wives for breakfast every morning, apparently. In this case, though, Shahrazad agrees to marry the king, knowing that he plans to kill her because she's trying to take revenge on him for killing her best friend. So Shahrazad in this one is dope. Like, she's such a planner. I feel like she's very Slytherin, and like, I was all about it. So the two main characters in this are Shahrazad and Khalid. Khalid is the king. And I think if I was like a villain in this world, I would rather fight Khalid. Because Khalid, he will cut you with a sword. But Shahrazad will burn the world down around you. Like, she is like a baller. I like her a lot. Just everything was great. I loved it. I loved Khalid. Surprisingly enough, I thought Khalid was going to be like this evil person she has to fight against. And then I was like, oh, he's just so broody. Like, I was like way into like this broody bad boy kind of thing. So I was like totally about Khalid. I love him so much. I just loved everything about it. I love the world. I mean, there's a real freaking magic carpet in this. Did I mention that? There's a carpet, a magic one, in this. Totally down. My pride pick for the month was Symptoms of Being Human by Jeff Garvin. And this is about a gender fluid teen named Riley. And it's kind of just like Riley's experience being gender fluid. Riley is just such an engaging protagonist. The humor was great. It's a really interesting story, and it goes into a lot of like in-depth conversation about like the mental state, what it feels like to be gender fluid. Also, it kind of goes into like the hate and prejudice that they feel on a daily basis, and it's all really cool. And it's just about through the eyes of like a quirky teen named Riley and their experience with it. It was really funny, and at times it was heartbreaking, and it just got me on all the feels. Riley is never definitely gendered in this. You don't know if Riley is, you know, genital-wise a boy or a girl. And that's not important really, because it's about the person, not the plumbing. And that's the point of the book. Another 5-star read was Royally Screwed by Emma Chase. This was a total cover buy. I mean, like, obviously. Like, why would it not be a cover buy? That's kind of amazing. Let's just be real for a minute. It's not usually the kind of book like I would totally go for. Well, it is the kind of a book I read, but not kind of a book that I would love. And it's so sappy, but like it's my brand of sappy. Like it hit like every sappy bone of my body, and I'm just like, I love it so much. I'm just ugly crying. It was like an emotional ride for me. Like there's like a down in her luck girl, and then she accidentally meets a prince, and then like they get together. Also, it is sufficiently smutty. Loved all the smutty bits. I loved all the characters. It's just super book candy. It's so fluffy and sweet and totally sappy, but like sappy in the best way. And I really like the characters, and I totally want to continue with the series. The last book I read this month was The Burning Maze, which is book 3 of the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan, and I gave this 4 stars. There was a lot of times in this book where I would shut it, put the book down, and be like, Rick Riordan, you son of a bitch. Like, I cursed his name several times during this book. Like, how you gonna do me like that, Rick Riordan? How you gonna do me like that? I don't want to give away spoilers, but he kills off a main character, and he's a son of a bitch for doing it. I got so angry. Like, it was horrible. It was like a horrific death, and it's for a main character, and these are kids. These are middle grade books. How you gonna do that, Rick Riordan? Not cool. Not cool, bro. That hurt my soul on many emotional levels, because these are characters I've grown to love, and they're like my little baby hero saving the world, and he just offs them. What a bitch, right? Also, funny enough, he spends like a good chunk of this book, I'd say maybe even like a good 20% of this book, just like hating on Los Angeles. So much. I was just like, who hurt you, Rick Riordan? You're killing main characters, and you're just like finding lots of unique ways to shit on Los Angeles throughout the whole book. Like, if you read it, you're like, damn, you really hate Los Angeles. And like, they weren't like, haha, funny jokes that everyone hears. Like, he got like oddly specific. like, who hurt you? Like, it was like really, like twist the knife. Like, he got in there and like found oddly, really specific jokes to say that was like mean. So I'm like, were you going through something when you wrote this? Like, what happened? What happened here? I mean, it still gets 4 stars because it's well written. It has all like the humor I like, and everything like that, the Librarian charm, and has that, but it's just like, you just shat all over LA for like a lot of the book, and you killed off a main character. You bitch. So that's kind of how I feel after reading it. Did I like it? Yes. Do I think he's an asshole? Kind of right now. Yeah, I do. I'm gonna need a drink after that Percy Jackson debacle. Like I need a drink. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of these books, which one's your favorites and least favorites. I want to know what you thought. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye!